Want to learn how to make the best croquetas de jamón on the internet? Let me show you. Extremely creamy, super crunchy, and an elegant jamoncito flavor. This is literally the queen of Spanish tapas. Let's go see how to make them. Okay guys, so ingredients. For our bechamel we're gonna use milk and a little bit of cream, so the texture later is super smooth and creamy. We're also gonna use some all-purpose flour and some fat. In this case I use 20% olive oil and 80% butter. A little bit of a good quality Ibérico jamón, some onions, 2 really small onions on 1 large also, and a couple of eggs that we're gonna fry and we're gonna put as a topping also in our bechamel. We're gonna use a little bit of salt, a little bit of black pepper, nutmeg, and this is dehydrated boletus, dehydrated porcini that goes super nice. It gives a little bit of umami to the whole thing and I love it. Then for the coating we're gonna use breadcrumbs. I'm gonna use 50% panko and 50% the traditional breadcrumbs, but go for your preference, and a little bit of egg. We're gonna start by warming up the milk and the cream at low heat so they don't burn. In the meanwhile, we're gonna cut our onions into a fine brunoise, which basically means small cubes that will almost disappear in our bechamel. And we're gonna do the same with the jamón. I personally like it to be really thin, almost like if it was shredded. By this moment, the milk is almost boiling and it's the perfect moment to drop the jamón, turn off the heat and let it infusionate. Now let's go with the bechamel. There's a few mistakes that you want to avoid in order to make the best croquetas. First mistake that we usually make in this recipe is to not cook the onion enough. We need to let it at least 15 minutes with the fat in order to remove all the moist of the onion, because therefore we're gonna be able to toast the flour afterwards. If we don't do that, then the flour is not gonna be toasted and our bechamel is gonna taste like raw. The second mistake, following the first one, not toasting the flour enough. Whenever we put the flour in the pan with the fats and the onion, we need to let it cook at low heat for at least 5-10 minutes. If you put your nose in and it still smells like raw flour, we still need to let it cook a little bit more. And the third one, that is actually pretty common in Spain, is to use a whisker instead of a spatula. I know it looks like if you don't use a whisker you're gonna have lumps, but believe me, trust the process. If you add the milk warm enough, you don't need the whisker. And if you use the whisker, the problem is that you're gonna develop the gluten out of the flour and you're gonna turn your croquetas into a mazacote, we call it in Spain, that is like a thick mix that is not pleasant in your mouth. So avoid using a whisker, use only the spatula, and with warm milk you're not gonna have a problem. Now to make this recipe a little bit more special, I like to add 2 egg yolks to the dough for extra richness. And obviously we're not gonna waste the egg whites. Instead, we're gonna fry them at high heat to get the texture of a fried egg and use it as a topping. Actually, it is pretty common in Spain to use hard-boiled eggs as a topping for croquetas, so I consider this method my own little twist. After cooking the bechamel for at least 15-20 minutes is the moment to season it properly and give it a try. Now just place your croqueta dough into a recipient, cover it with plastic foil and let it sit for at least 12 hours in the fridge. Okay, now, so after 12 hours in the fridge, this is ready to shape. So we are gonna build here what I like to call my croqueta station in order to work efficiently and not make a mess. We're just gonna put a big plate with a couple of eggs, and in another tray with space enough, we're gonna have breadcrumbs that, as I said, is 50% panko and 50% normal breadcrumbs, but you can use whatever you want. I think I'm gonna use a third egg. We have a lot of croquetas. By the way, you can see here that I'm not going to use any flour, even though most of people use flour and you can use it if you want. In my case, I have learned that the result without flour is a little bit more thin of the coating and I like it better, it's more light. So I prefer not to use it. Honestly, I think it's also not necessary. So, and I have these 2 forks that are going to be the tool that I use to move the croquetas from here and yeah, just from the egg to the breadcrumbs and to the clean tray. And I'm also gonna take 2 spoons. Spoons are gonna be what shapes the croqueta, so I don't have to make a mess with my hands. This will allow me to establish the same shape and same size in all the croquetas. And you see, with a little bit of movements with 2 spoons, we already have our croquetas beautifully shaped, what we call in the kitchen quenelle shape. There's probably out there people that do it better than me, but whatever. So And now you should also salt your eggs, okay? This is something no one tells you, but if you don't salt it, you're gonna feel it later when you bite on the croqueta. Like the coating has to be also with the right amount of salt. So a little bit of salt on the eggs and that's ready. Okay, now we just make the egg go all over. And now I take this, I remove the excess and I transfer it to my breadcrumb station or zone, whatever. And now another little trick that will decrease the amount of fallen soldiers later when we fry it, because you must know, when you make croquetas, you always have to count with 1 or 2 fallen soldiers per batch. But if you let them chill for a couple of minutes inside of the breadcrumbs are gonna dry a little bit the surface of the croquetas, and it's like just gonna generate a better coating. So what I do is now, while I shape the next 3, I let them chill here. Of course, these are a lot of croquetas. I think it's gonna be around 20 or 30 croquetas depending on the size. Obviously, I'm not gonna eat them all right now, also because it's 9 a.m. in the morning and I cannot have croquetas for breakfast, even though I would like to. I'm probably gonna freeze them, which is completely fine, and I highly recommend you to make always a big batch, and once they are coated, freeze them, and they are just ready to drop them in the fryer whenever you want. And also, don't forget the spoons. A little bit of oil helps. The shape is a little bit better with the oil. And look how beautiful. That's also why I like to mix 50% panko and 50% the original breadcrumbs, European ones. Because now you still have a nice coating, but the panko is also present and it's gonna be a really special texture when we bite them. So basically the technique is to grab the spoons from this part. If you grab them from here, it's impossible, you're not gonna make it. So grab them from here so you have all the control, and then from back to the front. And it may look a little bit difficult, but I swear whenever you make the number 10, it's already gonna be way easier. But if not, of course, just clean your hands, a little bit of oil, and you make balls or whatever you prefer. Now we're gonna fry a couple of them, but the rest I'm gonna freeze. Like this, once they are frozen, we can just put in a bag. And these ones, I'm gonna put a little bit more. While the oil is warming up, someone tell me in the comments if they recognize this, because I didn't know it, and it's super curious. I will take a look in the comments. Let's see if you are so clever. When frying, there's a lot of possibilities that if you don't do it right, your croqueta is gonna explode in the oil and you're gonna lose it. So a few things that you need to take on count in order to fry the croquetas properly is, first, if we're gonna fry them directly, this is not frozen or anything, it's from the fridge, so the bechamel inside is at, I don't know, something like 5 to 10 degrees, more or less, depending on your fridge. Whenever that temperature inside of the bechamel reaches 100 is when the bechamel starts boiling, and there is when the croqueta explodes. So what do we want? We want to make them beautiful and golden before the inside reach those 100 degrees. How do we do that? High heat, high temperature. I would say 190, for example, more or less. If the oil is not hot enough, you're gonna have to keep them a little bit more time, and there's when the croquetas are gonna explode. Small batches, okay? If now I put all the croquetas all together here, the temperature of the oil is gonna get too low. So in this case, I'm gonna fry 3 at the same time. And we're gonna put a timer. As I said, we want the fry, in this case, to be super fast and to get a beautiful golden brown without the croquetas exploding, right? After 1 minute, and there you go, enough. If we keep it a little bit longer, they would start exploding, so that's enough. And then let's also put these 2. Okay, 1 minute and a half. Like perfectly ready. And that's it. Look also how creamy the bechamel. culinary masterpiece. I really mean it.